Good evening, everyone. I am Councilmember Tim Sheridan from the City of Lake Elsinore, and I want to welcome you to the second annual Ruth Atkins Speaker Series event. We are very proud to welcome tonight Erin Simon from the Circle D Ranch, which is owned by Disney. And Erin is going to begin her talk here momentarily. But before we do, I want to introduce to you one of the hosts of the program tonight, the Lake Elsinore Historical Society. And I want to introduce Kim McElroy, who's the president of the Historical Society. And she's going to give a hello and mention the board members that are here. Afterwards, I will mention some of the dignitaries that we have here. We have a couple of elected officials here as well. And then we will let Erin begin her program. Kim?
Thank you. I want to thank Tim. Somebody was asking in the crowd, how did this come to be? Well, it was Tim's concept. After we lost Ruth Atkins, he said, why don't we do a speaker series and we'll call it the Ruth Atkins Speaker Series? I said, yes. And so together we've kind of worked on it. I say together, he does most of the work. Anyway, I thought some of you did know Ruth Atkins. Some of you may not have known Ruth. So I wanted to take just a minute, if he doesn't mind, to say that Ruth was one of the forming members. They were starting to form it when they invited her to join, I believe. So I don't know if she's a charter member or just right after that, of the Lake Elsinore Historical Society. During her tenure, she helped the city with a number of projects. If you know the street lamps along Lakeshore Avenue, Lakeshore Drive, she was instrumental in helping that move forward and supported them renovating those and getting them up. I think there's a picture of her lighting the light, or being one of the ones that pulls the lever. She also helped in renovating the American La France fire truck. Some of you who know the Winterfest, it always leads the Winterfest, or it has for a number of years. And we're hoping they're going to put it inside the new city building. I think that's how they won Ruth's support for getting the new city building, but Ruth was kind of a powerful force in our town, so you kind of wanted to have her support. I think Shakespeare could have been writing about her when he wrote of the Hermia in A Midsummer Night's Dream. And though she be but little, she is fierce. And she was. She was well loved and well respected by everyone, and she remained yet a humble woman with a passion to serve her community. I do know two things for sure about Ruth, however. I know she would love to have been here to hear Erin talk tonight. I also know she would hate that we named this speaker series after her. But enjoy tonight, and thank you.
I am very honored to be able to introduce Erin Simon. I went to a program that she put on a couple of months ago, and I have to tell you that the program that she put on at the Circle D Ranch up in Norco was a terrific program. Her enthusiasm for this subject led me to ask her to come and be our second speaker in the Ruth Atkins Speaker Series. She is the operations manager at Disney's Circle D Ranch, and this is where Disney stables its horses and trains them, and she's going to talk about that. So without further ado, I am honored to introduce Erin Simon from Disney's Circle D Ranch.
I'm the operations manager for Circle D and animal programs, which basically means that I run the ranch for Disneyland. And we work in lots of different capacities. So I joined Disneyland right out of high school. And my brother-in-law told me that there were horses at Disneyland. And I said, you don't know what you're talking about. They don't have horses at Disneyland, you silly goose. And he said, but yes, they do. So one day after my very early Starbucks shift, I got off at like 9:30 and said, I'm going to drive to Disneyland and I will see what he is talking about. So I drove down to Disneyland, and at that time you went to casting at Disneyland and walked in, and they had like computers, and that's how you applied. So I went in and talked to the lady, and I said, do you have horses here at Disneyland? And she said, actually, we do. And I said, cool, what do they do? What do these horses do? So she explained to me a little bit and asked, do you want to get a job here? And I said, well, I'll apply and see. And so I applied, and then that's what happened, friends. So in 2002, I applied. In 2003, I started working there and took a small break. I went to college, and turned out that my best suiting was not to do college and several jobs at the same time. That wasn't going to work if I wanted to graduate. So went back and graduated from college. And then we were in the middle of a recession. And so I thought, where's a great place that I enjoyed working, and it was Disneyland. So I went back there and within a year got into their management program, got to be a manager in Adventure Frontierland Main Street attractions, got to come back to Circle D and be a manager there with my area manager, who was Roy Hungerford at the time, and then did a couple of years of projects, which we'll get into, which is real fun, and then came back to be an ops manager there. So about 17 years now with Disney, and I still really enjoy it. They got to come and do a really fun tour. So we're going to do kind of a mashup of both of those things. The most fun part about Disneyland is the history and heritage. So we're obviously going to start with that part first and talk about what is Circle D. And then I will share with you guys where the ranch was at the resort and now what the ranch is and what we do with all of the fun. So let's see. Are you ready? Me and technology, we're not best friends. Look at how good it looks. It's like I did that on purpose. So the ranch started with Owen and Dolly Pope. So in the 1950s, obviously, Walt Disney is starting this new concept of having Disneyland start to be a thought, right? And he had Harper Goff, who was one of the original WED, or WDI as we know it now, artists, who's helping him plan Disneyland. And he goes to the Pan Pacific Auditorium in Burbank and sees this show that Owen and Dolly are putting on. The show is like has anyone here heard of Cavalia? It's like a Cirque du Soleil horse show. It's amazing, but think a Western style of Cavalia. And that's what they're doing in the Pan Pacific Auditorium with all these horses. He has like 200 horses doing all these different things, right? So they go and they watch it, Harper and Walt, and they fall in love. They're like, yep, that's it. Walt Disney is an avid equestrian. He also truly enjoyed steam trains, obviously was very, very artistic and very much thinking about all the different things that could happen, right? So horses were enveloped in his plan for Disneyland right off the bat. They were going to have horses everywhere in different capacities. And these were the folks who were going to help him do it. So they lived in this house here. And this is lovingly now called the Pope House. But there were 5 properties on Disneyland. And Walt took the Popes out to see this new property. It's all orange groves and then 5 different houses. And they were allowed to pick the house that they wanted. And then that house was picked up and moved to where the ranch was going to be. And they are some of the only folks who lived on Disneyland property and were able to raise their kids there. And then they moved in 1966 out to Florida in Walt Disney World and kind of did the same thing over again. So they helped open Walt Disney World and finished raising their family there and eventually retired out in Florida, right? So how they transpired to get here, though, is that they go to the Walt Disney Studios and they see this big diorama of Disneyland and they get told the whole story. And so they say, yes, they're going to do it, right? So we're going to go through some of the fun history of Disneyland. This is Walt in the tall picture with some horses that's actually not at Disneyland. It says Disneyland Stables, but truly that's out at a place called Golden Oak Ranch. And that's off the 14 freeway out there. Now it's kind of a really big movie studio. So you would notice it from things like Wisteria Lane. And I say that, and immediately upon saying that, I have no idea what the name of the show is, but it was very popular. And yes. And so you like that? I was like, who knows? But they also filmed a whole bunch of Westerns and a whole bunch of other really big Disney live action classics. They developed things like lakes that were half shallow and half very deep. So you could swim some horses or some folks they're in a deep body of water, or you could be running across a river in this space. So that one is taken out there. The black and white on the bottom is actually a picture of back of house Disneyland. And that's one of Walt's daughters and Walt Disney and Owen Pope checking out some of the horses. This is prior to Disneyland being built. And then that Surrey wagon, the colorful one up top, is a picture of obviously once it opened. So the Popes moved to the studios in Burbank, and they brought their horses and performers with them. And then they moved to Disneyland and they did the same thing. So before Disneyland even opened, they had 250 head of horses, mules, donkeys, ponies, you name it, they had it there. And that's where they ended up starting to train and get ready eventually to open Disneyland. So The, again, longer photo that's on there is of Walt and Owen riding in the back of house studios at Burbank. And that stagecoach, it's named the California there on the bottom, is the same stagecoach on the right-hand side. And in that picture is one of the original Mouseketeers. And that carriage that you see there, we luckily still get to keep at the ranch, and it's in our carriage barn currently. And then if you look up on that top one, it's a little bit hard to see, but you can't get the bigness of it if you cropped it. But you can kind of spy the barn up there at the very, very top. It was originally 5 acres in the back of house, had some really big pastures, had a really big barn. The Pope House was kind of nestled right in there. And then on the other side, where we all know Toontown to be, was an arena. And Walt would invite his friends over. He was a big polo player. They would play polo. They had a couple of cows to pretend like everyone knew how to work the cows in the back of house there. And they just had a great time with all of the horses there. So a couple of more shots here of the Disneyland history, which are all just really fun. The different things that were out on Main Street horse-drawn streetcars, and we still have those operating today. You can see in the top photo there that there's, it looks like a fire wagon. That's called a chemical wagon. And that was out on Main Street originally. We had a couple of Surreys out on Main Street. You can see the shot of the California again rolling down Main Street to be the head of the parade there. And then in Frontierland, they had a couple of different things. So there was mule rides, there was stagecoach rides, and there was the covered wagon rides. For a long time, we had one of the covered wagons still at Disneyland. Unfortunately, when we went to move off property, it didn't really want to move from where it was. It said, "No, thank you, ma'am." And so unfortunately, I wasn't able to come with us. And then here's a couple of photos of that. I thought that one on the black and white one is a really fun depiction of where all of the different things kind of converged together. So you would get to get on the covered wagon ride, or you'd get on the stagecoach or the mules in the same spot. And it just shows a really unique pause of history there with the horses. So then Circle D as we knew it here, and I say we as in like me, and there's a couple of friends in here who have also, explored Disneyland. This is the barn. You could see it in that old photo where you see kind of a big tin building. That's this barn still. And this is there. You'll see a lot of photos like this, which is really fun because it just shows all the cast members with an array of different animals. If you zoom in really close, there's some baby horses in some of the photos. There's donkeys and some goats. There's some birds. You name it, we've probably done it at Circle D. Here's some just really fun photos of it. But when I hired in, there was this cute little line that said that you have to be open to, and I was an hourly cast member at this point, right? You have to be open to working with all sorts of animals. And I was like, absolutely. Got it. All sorts of animals with fur, right? That's the kind. No. In the garage. So at the time, Indiana Jones was down for a major refurbishment. And so whatever would you put in front of there except for all the creepy crawly animals you could ever imagine. So we had snakes and we had scorpions and there were tarantulas. There were rats. There were giant millipedes. There were it's terrible. Who don't? So we had all of those and you would have to put them in their little carriers and then you take them out to Indiana Jones, and then you put them in their on-stage enclosures, and then you stay out there and tell people all about them. So I can tell you all about them, but I will never, ever, ever touch some of them. They'll just stay in their on-stage enclosure. And then you have to put them back in carrying cases and take them back home. And that was an adventure. So we had some of those. We had some birds. They lived at the Jungle Cruise for a little bit of time. We had a finch who lived in the bazaar for a little bit. And then we had the petting farm. So the petting farm opened early on. It was closed for a period. It opened again in 2003. And then when, that like weird planet from Star Wars landed, it also had to go. So luckily we had a wonderful family who adopted all of the goats together. And we had something upwards of like 23 goats. And they said, well, take them all so they can all stay together. So they all went together. And they got to retire out in a pasture in Menifee. So they had this beautiful hilly landscape and they all, ran around like hooligans. They're like, look at this. Here we are. We've made it. So we've gotten to do all of those things. And then at the petting farm, we also had turkeys, you guys, because that was in the line when it said all animals. They talked about turkeys too, apparently. And so we took care of the presidentially pardoned turkeys for quite a long time. In fact, we had one that made a record, length of experience, and he was with us for 8 years. His name was Courage. He really took his name very, very seriously. He made the move off property with us and stayed with us in a temporary housing. And that was quite an adventure also, So no pictures of those guys, but here are more pictures of the back of house. This barn is a lot of fun because it didn't change very much from when it originally opened to when we got to go and experience it and when I got to go experience it. So on the front, there was still a big braiding bench. And so you would line your horses up on the front and get to stand on the braiding bench and get them all ready. And in the back, they still had stand stalls. They mostly were decorative at that point, but they were available in the back. And then inside the middle part, it was all box stalls. So a bunch of box stalls in the middle. And then out in the back, it changed a couple of times from having some pastures where the horses would all get to kind of run around and play together to that big run. And then we changed it another time because why not? That's what we like to do at Disneyland, and make a different set of runs for them. And then, like I said, there was this planet that was coming to Disneyland, and it's called Batu. And it happened to land right where the Pope House lives. So if you go and you're in Disneyland and you happen to see a Millennium Falcon there, you can just imagine exactly where you were. That's where the Pope House used to sit and where the barn and all of that property used to be. And then we found this place. So we were looking for about a little over 2 years for a place for us to land, right? The hope was to stay close to Disneyland and to be able to be in that area. And as we all know, rural area in Anaheim is a little bit difficult to come by. And so we expanded our search, and then we expanded our search again, and we looked at so many houses. And then we saw this one, and it is that big rectangle. They told me I can't point at things because it won't work. And I said, you don't want me pointing at things anyway, because that'll get confusing. But the big rectangle that's about 5 acres there in the middle with all of the rows of chicken hatching is the ranch. And this family, when we walked in, the house was very much like the Pope House. It had the same feeling. It was very family oriented. It had only been in the DeRuyter family since it had been a parcel that was sold in Norco. So they purchased it in the late 1950s. And then they raised farm fresh eggs and then chicken, and they sold them literally from their front garage. And then they transitioned in the 1980s to a Christmas tree ranch. And so they would sell Christmas trees, and folks in Norco would line up the day after Thanksgiving, and you could go tag your tree, and then you had to take your tree before Christmas Eve. And it was a very popular place for people to go. We have some cast members who remember going as kids to go get their tree from the DeRuyter Ranch. And so when we walked in, we just knew this was the space, right? It was the right place. It had the same feel. It had the same family value. It had kind of all of the nostalgic Disney stuff that we were looking for. Plus it was 5 flat acres of land that we could develop and make our own. So we were able to purchase it, and then we made it into Circle D, which is what it is now. So it still has the original house. The house hasn't changed much. In fact, the DeRuyter family will sometimes stop by, and if they have like a family reunion in town, they'll ask to come and do a quick tour. And it's the most fun to be a part of because you can hear them talking like, oh, it hasn't changed. Oh, this is where, the boys' room was. Oh, that's the girls' room. And mom and dad's room is there. And this is the same floor. And so it's really, really fun to have them come in, but the rest is totally different. So we were able to put in a 20-horse raised center aisle barn, which is that big red and white barn there. We put in 2 auxiliary barns, so the carriage barn that you can see, and then a hay barn. We have a panel walker, and we have 2 round pens, plus a enormous arena in the back, and then 2 really fun turnouts. So you get to see all of the horses in the front yard. They play with each other. It's really very important in our barn that they go and they just get to be horses, right? So what we would like to do is make sure that as they are working, they're going to work with a lot of people. Sometimes there's upwards of, 45,000 people visiting Disneyland in one day, and they all have to walk past our ponies in the morning. So it's really important that they are comfortable and that they're confident and that they're cared for incredibly well. So when I said that earlier, they are spoiled, they're incredibly spoiled. So we have a chiropractor for them, a massage therapist, they get PEMF, their farrier comes once a week. And then our wonderful vet lives literally not 2 miles away around the corner and helps with anything and everything so that we can make sure that the horses are cared for, in an exceptional way. And they have a nutritionist. So that's one of the more fun parts, is that when we get new hay, it all gets cored. You get to find out what the nutrition is of the hay and then make sure that we're balancing all their diets appropriately. So they're getting the right kind of, forage with a balanced grain to end them off and make sure that they're all happy and they have a good time. So they also have little play groups. It's real fun. We have like a little, board that says who plays nicely with who and who doesn't. So there is a row that says these two can't play or like these two can't play. They're not allowed. So, that's kind of Norco in a nutshell. And then we'll talk about the ponies. This is my favorite Brady Bunch photo of them. So we tend to keep all of the big draft breeds. So Percherons, Belgians, Shires, Clydesdales, Brabants. In that picture, you see a couple that look like big bays. Those are Percheron Belgian crosses. Currently, we have 20. We don't currently have Brabants, but we do have a single Shire, and then a couple of crosses that we have in there. And here are some of their jobs. So the horses get to do all kinds of different things. They work on Main Street. They do weddings. They do headless horsemen, and those are my horses and my riders who ride the headless horseman horse. They do resort and city parades. And we do different kinds of meet and greets and that kind of stuff. The one up in the middle there with Mickey Mouse is a holiday time cavalcade. So that one goes, 2 or 3 times a day. They take Mickey down Main Street in a cute carriage. And the other white carriage one that you see there is a wedding photo. So we do have different carriages that can be purchased for weddings. And then they also work with Cinderella and her crystal coach. And they pull the crystal coach for any very special engagements. Again, I said we do have several headless horseman horses. That is a lot of fun. And those sweet riders are in fact looking, out of this small of a space to be able to get down Main Street. But they do tons and tons of training to be able to get to that point. So we engage at the ranch using a combination of natural horsemanship and also just different levels of desensitizing to make sure that the horses are prepared for what they're going to go and do. And the reason we do that is because, again, we want them to be comfortable and confident in their role, right? We want them to get out to Main Street and feel like this is old hat. I know what I'm doing. This is fine. So we do everything at the ranch and we start from the ground up. First, we start in the round pen with them and we create relationships and boundaries and make sure that they know what is going on and what we're thinking and what we're up to. And then we start in hand and we'll do that all over the property. They have to be able to work in the round pen, in the arena, around the property, out in the front, on the, driveway. And then we ride them. So we always will go in that order because when we ride them, we can build confidence by using both our bodies and by using our physical cues to tell them what we're expecting of them so that when we drive them, they already know what those physical cues are. So it's as easy as me then walking up and simply putting my hand on one part of their barrel and they're like, oh, yes, ma'am, I'll just scooch on over here because they're confident in the question that I'm asking them to respond to. And then we pretend they don't know any of that and we take them to the resort and we start it all over again from the bottom up. So they go back to the resort and they stay there as well. So when we go to the resort, there's a 6-horse, just a simple shed row barn there. And it's right behind you. Probably if you've come to the resort in the last couple of years, you passed right by it and you had no idea. It's right by the parking. So as you right by the tram drop-off parking, right? So as you get dropped off by the tram, there's my little stable. It's tucked right behind the fence and you can't even really see it. And And the horses will stay there overnight, and they'll stay there for probably 4-ish days, depending on what they're doing. Every horse works a schedule that is appropriate for that horse. So we don't have one blanket item, and they're all individuals. So we treat them like individuals, and they all have their own goals. So they all have goals that they work towards, not timelines. And they work towards those individually. So a lot of times people ask, like, how long does it take to get them, to go out to Main Street? Well, for some horses, it can be, 3 months. And for other horses, it might take 1.5 years. And it just depends on that horse and what they're up to, and whether they say, yep, this is right for me, or nope, I don't really think you know what you're talking about. And then we have to go back to seeing if we can convince them that we do in fact know what we're talking about. So they all have different goals. And that's really important because we want them to be able to have a long life with us. We don't want them to come and work in a place where we know they're going to go walk on concrete, right? That's not surprising. That's what it is in the park. So we have to balance that. We have to make sure that we're taking care of their whole body of health and making sure that they're all good to be able to do that. And when you treat them that way, what we have found is that now all of our horses seem to be, for the most part, aging out of the program. Of course, we have some here and there that, a medical ailment comes up, or we have one horse who's decided this is maybe just not the right place for them, right? This is not what I like, and you can't convince me that I do. And we say, yes, ma'am. So they're all individuals. They'll tell us. So that too. So we make sure that we look at those things, but overwhelmingly the last group of horses that we've had out, all are 17. And that's when we graduate from our program into retirement. And at 17, they go typically home with one of our cast members because, we work alongside them. And my cast members do a ton of work. It's a really tough job a lot of the times because we have really high expectations, and they set the bar for themselves sometimes over those expectations. So they work really, really hard, and they care about these animals a lot, and then they fall in love. And then typically they're like, I'm taking that one home. So I'll just wait till it graduates. So that's the really lovely thing. But lots of really fun, different jobs. We've gotten to take horses to Wheel of Fortune. We took a horse on the soundstage in the Sony studios. We've done, movie premieres, all kinds of just random things sometimes where they ask, can we do this? And we're like, sure. And then sometimes I'm wondering, did I say yes to that, you guys? And my other managers are looking at me like, she just said yes to that. And I'm like, yeah, we'll do it. It's fine. And then my cast members. So you might wonder, like, how in the world do we do all of this? Well, I currently have about 70 cast members and 5 managers who work with me, and they range in all kinds of different jobs. So there's a stable attendant, streetcar driver, and streetcar driver guest control. We have equine trainers, transport drivers, leads and trainers, equine riders, wedding driver and footman, headless horseman rider, and all kinds of other ones that you wouldn't even truly think of, headless horseman guest control. We have livestock drivers for parades or special events or all kinds of different things. So these are just really fun photos of the cast members out getting to do stuff. When we say the horses get out and worked every day, it's because my cast members literally get every single one of them out of their stalls to do something every single day, even if it's just to go take a walk in the panel walker. And the panel walker is like a 5-stall moving treadmill. Then they load up the panel walker and let everybody walk for a little bit of time. And then they'll get a second group in there or something, but the goal for cast members when they come to work with us is that they gain a new skill of some sort, right? They learn something new while they're doing this job. They improve their horsemanship, or they improve their leadership skills, or, they learn how to do something that they didn't previously know how to do. And then they're able to go into a different job somewhere and be incredibly successful because of those skills, right? Hopefully that's the goal. I put these in here because they're too fun, and it shares a little bit more about what we truly get to do. Those 2 hooligans hugging that horse are mine. So I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they beg all the time to come out. My 12-year-old was going to come and help me tonight. She made me bring some props so that I can show you guys at the end, because she was very concerned that you wouldn't get the full picture. So those are them. That is our lovely horse, Oliver. He is I call him the understudy to the understudy for Headless Horseman. And it's because you can tell he's just a wee guy. But he can do anything. He is like the horse that can do anything and everything. If you asked him to go, stand by the launching pyro thing, he's like, all right, I'll go do it. You ask him to go out on Main Street for the Rose Bowl cavalcade when we have the, Rose Bowl teams coming and confetti is raining down and you can't see where you're going. And he's like, all right, I'll go do it. He is about 1 foot shorter than the other 2 Headless Horseman horses. So when he's got to pull a Headless Horseman shift, I can tell very much. And again, because he's old reliable, he literally will move down that parade route so slow. He's like, I will do it, but I'm going to do it at my own pace. So we call him the understudy to the understudy, but he is solid gold. He is like the most gold nugget horse you could have. In the middle on the top there, we've got Champ, and he has a brother, Chip. And there's Chip and Champ, and they are identical, except for that Chip has one little chip taken out of his blaze and a chocolate chip on one of his feet. He's got like a black tuft of hair. And that's literally the only way you can tell those 2 apart because they are identical. But they are lovely horses, and they do all kinds of things. And Champ just got to do his first year of special events, and he is just 6 years old. So he's a good guy. Below him, we have some Percherons that went and did the Huntington Beach 4th of July parade. They're very interested because in that photo, the flyover is happening of the big airplane that comes before it goes. The one is like, are we supposed to be taking a nap? And the other one is like, what is that thing that is coming at us, guys? So those are just really fun events that we get to go and partake in. And on the next to it, there is Jack. And I'm going to mess this up because I do it every time, with a representative of the Rams, whose name I can't remember. But he was a joyful time, and he came out. We went to the Martin Luther King Jr. parade in Los Angeles and got to take Tiana and a bunch of her friends, and it was amazing. And Jack was a rock star. So he was very, very popular. All of the police officers wanted a picture with Jack also. So did our friend from the Rams. And Jack was very interested in him. Everyone else, not so much. But this fine one, yes. And then, like I said, we have our vet who takes incredible care of our horses right around the corner from us. And that's a photo of them getting their teeth done because every horse needs a dentist. So they get their teeth done. We have them checked twice a year just to make sure. Horses are so much fun. Their teeth grow continually. So they're grazers. They're supposed to eat, throughout the day. Our horses, again, because they're spoiled and also because we can, get fed 3 times a day, and they all get fed in portagrazers. So it's like a tube that basically mimics grazing. It makes it a little more difficult for them to get the hay out quickly. And so it prolongs the feeding period. Horses are very unique. They can empty their stomach in like 2 hours if they aren't full enough and or grazing in periods enough. And so it's just a fun thing that we are able to then feed them, extended throughout the day, and then get them all of the care that they need. This is where she is. Okay, you guys ready? My child told me I needed to do this, so I'm doing it. But this is, she was like, you have to explain to them how they work on Main Street and how big they are. So this is a light horse shoe, right? This is a pretty big one too. I can't see the size anymore because it's all, this is a 2. So this is a big sized light horse shoe, okay? This is my smallest horse's shoe. It's just because I think this one is teeny. But this is one of the horse's shoes. You'll notice the difference in our horses is that they have these little cleats on the bottom. And that's so that when they're walking on Main Street, they have some extra grip on the ground. You'll also notice if you go to Main Street now that it's changed a little bit, and there's a path of bricks on Main Street. And that just created a different experience for the horses to walk where they had a little bit more grip, and it's a little softer material, right? So they're not, it's still really hard. We say soft, still a brick, but when they're stepping on it, it's not quite as firm, right? They have a little bit more give and they got a little bit more grip in it. So just fun things that we get to do for them. I should have my name tag on so you can see the size comparison, but this is Maximus's name tag. These go, come on in. These go up on the top of the streetcars so people know who is pulling their streetcar. And then we put these on all of their corrals or, their stall doors so that when we get to have tours or people come by, you can see who's where. But yeah, that's kind of all of the rest of what we do there and what we have going on. So now we have just enough time if you guys want to do some questions. Kim's like,
But my question is to you, how do we get you at our Winterfest parade?
Lake Elsinore, of course, has a terrific Winterfest, as you may or may not know, the first Saturday in December every year.
Oh no. Okay, wait. I have to make a confession first. We're in Norco, and so we are currently first loyal to Norco for parades. So I'll tell you, on the first Saturday of December is their winter parade also. But maybe that will change. Maybe we'll do 2 parades in one day. See, there's no one here to roll their eyes at me right now saying, are you sure, Erin? And I'm like, yeah, why not try that? Why not?
I'm Deborah. I'm wondering about your vet. Is he employed by Disneyland and that he's so close? Is he just a vet for you guys, or does he have outside clients?
Ready? Here's the answer. No, and I wish. So we use SoCal Equine in Norco, and it's Dr. Juan's practice. He has a lot of vets who work with him. We predominantly currently work with Dr. Weatherall, who's another surgeon who works with him, and she also has a specialty in sport horse medicine. And one of the really wonderful parts about that is that we treat our horses like athletes, right? Obviously, we're doing all of these crazy things with them, but it truly has made all the difference in the world. So we have gotten a lot of different data just from our own horses to be able to show that, like, hey, this has truly improved all of the experiences with them. And he is truly one of the most patient vets I think I've ever met in my life, and just has been so gracious with our horses. We have a horse, you guys, that was actually, this is her shoe. Her name is Val. She wears a size 9. She was terrified of vets and was unkind with her displays of how she would show that to people, especially Dr. Juan. And he always was just gentle and kind and slow and, brought her treats and took it easy. And I never once saw him get frustrated. And he had plenty of reason to get frustrated with her because she was very good at demonstrating how strong she was. And he would just, come back and try again. But yeah, I wish, but they see lots of other horses and they are wonderful. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. But they happened to just move into the place where we were right along the same time. So I think we both kind of moved to Norco simultaneously, and it was serendipitous. So it just worked out.
I'm curious about their dailies and their schedules. So what are their shifts like? And then are they at the park for, say, months or weeks? And then do they rotate in and out? On a yearly basis, I'm just curious how you manage that.
End of this one. That's a really good question. So our horses work on a rotating schedule, and the goal always is to get a minimum of 5 days off in between going to and from. So they go to the resort, they travel out in a trailer, and then they'll stay at the resort for the duration of their shift. Now, every horse is unique, and some do just 3 days, and some do 4 days, some do weddings. And so they'll do like 5 days at the resort, right? Because a wedding in between is like they pull this carriage and they stand for 30 minutes and then they pull the carriage back to where it parks. And then that's their shift. So they get to work out on Main Street instead for another day out there. So kind of just depends. And then what we try and do is once we've got a good balance of horses, and this is always changing, right? Because they are their own selves, and they also do silly things. So sometimes they play too hard, and then they get, they've bitten each other in the face, and we don't put them out on Main Street when they have big gouges in them because people are like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "Well, Bert bit him in the face because he was teasing him and he wouldn't stop." But that doesn't work out on Main Street because people are like, "The horse is wounded." And I'm like, "No, they bite each other." Because they act like horses, and that's important. So we want them to act like horses. So we do put them together and we do let them, fight it out sometimes if that's what they feel like they need to do in that moment. But it also means that there are sometimes breaks. So then they each will get an opportunity to take some extended time off, right? And extended time off doesn't necessarily just mean they're going to sit in their stalls. A lot of time, extended time off means that they're going to do training on something specific and it'll just be in Norco, right? So maybe it's a lot of trail riding just to get used to cars and people and, trash cans, because inevitably they don't care about things at Disneyland, and you take them out on a trail ride and then they see a trash can and they're like, that could be the killer trash can that I've learned about my entire life. And then there's a fine chance that we mock them when they do that, because I'm like, you are embarrassing right now, because you can do the double-decker bus and the, little cars, and there's a band playing on the castle, and then there's like all this entertainment, but that trash can is it. One horse was convinced that there was a cactus around the corner, and that cactus was a no-go. And I was like, this is insane to me. Actually, do you know who it was? It was Oliver. As soon as I said that, my little gold nugget of a horse thought the cactus was the worst thing in the world. So he got to stay home for a couple of weeks and literally just ride to the cactus every day to hang out. Like, just go visit your cactus friend. So it just depends on each horse and what they're up to. But we do try and make sure that they're all rotating, and then they'll get like lengthier breaks in between there, just to be able to do a tune-up or learn something new or do something different.
Hey, Erin, this is Dorothy. So I'm going to ask you a personal question. You were telling me that the horses age out at 17? So, and that cast members take some of these horses home? So how many did you take home?
I wish. I've wanted to take home every single one that has graduated from our system, but I had horses for a very long time. So I had, at one point I had 7 horses, and then I was down to just my one old man, and I had my one horse for 24 years. And I tell people that this is really a terrible thing to admit in front of a crowd of people with a microphone, but I'll do it anyway. When I lost my horse, it was the worst thing ever. I literally was distraught over losing my horse, and I might have lost some family members, but the horse was the worst, you guys, because it was awful. But there is a fine chance that there is a pony who is going to come home with me, but we don't know that yet. So yes, if I could, I would collect them all. But they all have their own unique things. We most recently retired Odie. He was our like all-star headless horseman horse, and he loved that job, and he was very naughty at it. So he liked to make me have a heart attack every single time we were going down the parade route, because I kid you not, thought that the whole crowd was there for him. And as soon as people cheered, he was like, and it's on. And he would just like be so animated. He'd toss his head. It was like he forgot he had 4 legs, and he would slip sometimes. And then he'd like bounce up and be like, whoops. And then people would be like, whoa. And then he'd be like, yes, that's me. And he was terrible. But he loved it. He'd be like so excited. And then he'd sleep in between his 2 things, and you'd be like, oh, he's tired and sweet and nice. And then he'd go to do it again. And he was horrible, but he retired, and we did a whole retirement parade for him. So we trick-or-treated, because that was his jam. So he did his final season. And then the day before Halloween, he trick-or-treated backstage with all the cast members. So we saw something ridiculous, like 480 cast members came to trick-or-treat with him. Don't worry, he didn't get that many apples or carrots, but we did give him a limited amount of treats at each station. And we kind of went to a couple of different stations, and people got to take pictures with him. And I teased one of the cast members, because I was like, he's my favorite. And I don't really claim favorites usually, but he was for sure one of my favorites. And I said, well, now we have part ownership together, because if you're going to have him, like, sorry, I come with him, as it turns out. But she's wonderful and having a great time. And he has his own miniature pony. So imagine, this horse is enormous. He's 19 one-hands. So he is 6 foot 3 inches at the wither. So at his shoulder, he is huge. And he has a little miniature pony that's his best friend. And the miniature pony's name is Marshmallow. And Marshmallow hangs out with him all the time.
Hi, Erin. I'm Melissa. I saw a couple of your horses in Norco for a down under horsemanship with Clinton Anderson's trainer. Are you still using that methodology? And that's one question. Number two is, do you offer tours at the current facility?
So yes, we have kind of adopted a lot of different things for training the horses. The wonderful thing about the Down Under Horsemanship training program, like when you look at the way the program is laid out, is that it looks like an operating guide from Disneyland. And so it makes it very easy for us to adopt that type of natural horsemanship, so that everyone can use it and so that we have accountability to how to use it. Because the way that Clinton Anderson broke out the programming is literally like 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. So you do 1, 2, 3, then you do A, B, C, right? You do it that way. We have modified a little bit. It's obviously not a driving program or for quite what we're doing with the amount of human beings. But it has been a great base for how we do our program. And now we've been able to build into that program a lot of more specific things for how we train stuff, right? But we love it. It's great as a base method. It gives all of our cast members a really great opportunity to find success doing something. And the most wonderful part about having a program that is already built, that has like it laid out in that way, is that we're all speaking the same language with the horses. So the thing about natural horsemanship is that you're trying to initiate conversations with the horse in a language or in a way that they understand, right? So instead of like, I'm going to read this dictionary to you and then you're going to recite it back to me and then you're going to be ready to go take an SAT, right? It would be like, we're going to say all of those words and we're going to say them over and over again. Well, with horses, they work in a different way, right? So it's all a pressure and release. That's how they interact with one another. That's kind of the more so language that they're understanding with each other. And so by using that program, we utilize those kinds of methods, and then the horses all get it simultaneously from everybody at the same time, and they're far less confused. When I hired in 2003, there wasn't a training program, right? There just wasn't. There were people who had worked there for a very long time, and so they had sort of given that knowledge down and down and down and down. And it's like playing telephone. So you start losing parts of, and some of that's really important, very valuable knowledge, right? Like driving is not super common. And all of that experience is not super common especially in Southern California. And so, when you start losing some of those pieces, it gets really difficult. So we adopted this program and then went and found a lot of folks who, were able to lend some of their expertise to be able to help us build in different driving and being able to make sure that we can teach those things. And then tours, we provide tours for just special groups. So we'll do like boys and girls or YMCA or different community groups and that kind of stuff, but we don't do public tours. And the only reason we don't do that is because then we have neighbors. We're technically in a residential area, and I can guarantee would have like 7 tours a day. And our neighbors wouldn't like us that much anymore. Currently, they like us, and that's good. So we're going to keep it that way. But we don't, unfortunately, do public tours currently.
My name is Lynn, and I was wondering how your horses apply for their job at Disneyland. Where do you get them from, and what are you looking for? Temperament, breed, any specifics? Oh, one more thing. One more thing. Do you know that you are very anthropomorphic?
I don't. It's exciting. All right. Good deal. So I have had the pleasure of getting to buy the horses for the last, I think, 12 years for Disneyland. And it's been a very fun thing. And now, thanks to knowing how our program works and being able to have this training program in place, when we go buy a horse or go on a buying trip, typically I can tell if the horse is going to work out without having to hook it or ride it or do anything like that. I can just work with it on the ground really fast and be able to see. So what we're looking for in our horses is that I'm looking at a horse that, one, is built correctly for the job, because we know that sometimes conformation, when incorrect, can play a significant role in a horse not being physically successful at its job. And then 2, we're looking at how it reacts to things. So I want a horse that's going to quickly change from being reactive to being thoughtful about something. So typically what I do, and I look like a crazy person because most of the places I'm going are these big ranches or farms, right? That are like, maybe an Amish farm or maybe they've passed this farm down for 150 years in their family. And here I come with like, some rope halter and something, and I go wagging something at their horse to see how I want their horse to react somehow, right? Like I want to see what their reaction is. And likelihood is that they're going to drag me on the end of a lead rope for a little bit. And I'm going to keep trying to get their attention back to me and see how quick they change from like, this is something scary that I've never experienced before to, oh, I guess I'll think about what I'm doing really fast and see if this is the right, like, what answer are you looking for kind of thing. And we have had a really great success rate so far with the horses. I think I've only had one that's ever been like, hey, this job is not for me. And when we look at that, we oftentimes look at like, how do we play a role in that, right? Like, what did we do? This horse that said, this is not the place for me is a horse that doesn't like 60 people touching it. It's happy with just one. And it doesn't really need to be touched. She's like, if you want to walk past and tell me how pretty I am, great. But touching is no. Like you don't get to pet. And so I just walk past and tell her she's pretty. And she's like, thank you. Yes. And so, they're all different. They all have their own personalities. And we want them to be different. So, the hard part is like, you can get trapped really easily into buying that like one type of horse. And so I remind my managers who work with me that we also want some different level horses a little bit, right? Because we want to teach too. We don't want just to get all the ones that turn into the Olivers, who are the solid gold nuggets who, I could put my dog Fig in the driver's seat and be like, walk on, Oliver. And he'll be like, sure, I got you. So you don't want a bunch of those. You want some so that people can learn and grow their skills and be able to do that kind of stuff. So we do sometimes buy one that's a little more in the, range of try, and then it turns into a challenge, and it's kind of fun. More fun for me because I like the challenge. Not always fun for everyone else, but that's okay. But yeah, did I answer all the parts of that question? All right. Ooh, that's so it's kind of like a puzzle. So I made oh yes. How old is the question of the horse? So yes. So how old and when do they come? So when I first started buying horses, I didn't have the forethought to understand that like you should buy a range of horses in age, right? Because I was like, this is the right age that we want here, is this one age. So for a little bit, we bought like 7 and 8 year olds because that's a great age. Draft horses physically mature a little bit slower. So they're not physically fully mature until about 6, 7, 8 anyway. But also sometimes mentally we don't get mature until that age as well. Sometimes we're still a little bit young as we're going. So I might have purchased quite a few in the 8-year-old range and then quickly realized, oh, we're going to have 6 8-year-olds at one time who are all going to have to retire. And that's a bad news bears because we don't want to be training 6 horses at one time. So very quickly we realized we need to look at the program and kind of plug horses in more appropriately. So like finding horses in certain age range. As soon as you go to buy a horse that is a certain color or a certain age, they don't exist in the for sale ads. They don't. So if anyone wants to know a secret, just think of that one. I just need a 4-year-old that's gray. There's no such thing as a 4-year-old that's gray at that point in time. So we try and still stay in a range. Like, oh, is it, 4, 5, 6? Is it 8, 9, 10? Recently I bought a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 9-year-old, which all sort of fit in the right age range for us. And they all have been worked with, teams or a 4-up or a 6-up. So that means there's 4, 2 and 2, there's 6, 2, 2 and 2. The one has worked in an 8, it's worked in a 4 across, it's worked all kinds of different ways. So hopefully they'll be a great fit for us. They seem very, very smart. They're very sweet. They're only like 40 days with us so far. But they come in, we do a quarantine because we are part of Animal Kingdom, and that makes us akin to, we're like, a branch off from an AZA accredited facility. So we follow certain rules there. And so we quarantine them. And then after they're quarantined, then they start kind of making their way into the general herd. So usually we start moving them closer and closer and closer to where the most of the work is going to happen so that they get really comfortable around all of us. And we also use peer pressure a little bit for training. So horses herd animals, right? If we're going to train a horse on fireworks, I'm not hanging on to a 2,000-pound horse kite. That just is a bad idea. So at the resort, we'll use, 2 very, very, very settled, very calm, very typical horses for us. And then we'll put the newbie right in the middle. And usually what happens is the fireworks go off And then the newbie's a little bit like all over the place for a second. And then they kind of look over and they're like, well, he doesn't care. And then they look over here and they're like, well, he doesn't care either. And then they do this thing where they just kind of stand there like this. And then the next time it's not as scary, and the next time it's not as scary. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, never mind. It's nap time. So fireworks at the resort is nap time. It's when all the vehicles have a restriction. And so no vehicles are moving around and it's very quiet. And so at about 8:30, you'll see all my horses start to lay down and they take a little nap. And then at 9:30, the fireworks go off and some of them will like raise their head and be like, huh? And then they're like, huh, never mind. And they'll go back to sleep for like another 40 minutes and then things start bustling again. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, please give a nice round of applause to Erin Simon. Erin will stay for a few minutes if you'd like to take a picture with her or ask her another question. Again, Kim McElroy joins me at the front. This was put on by the City of Lake Elsinore and the Lake Elsinore Historical Society. Lake Elsinore was chartered in 1888. We have a terrific history here in Lake Elsinore, and we even have a better Lake Elsinore Historical Society. We would urge you to join. We have applications here tonight, $25 a year. It's very reasonable. Please consider joining us here in Lake Elsinore in the Historical Society. And we have a museum here as well, which is downstairs. It's open on Wednesdays and Saturdays, 11 to 3, Sundays, 1 to 4. It's a terrific museum. And please, when you leave tonight, consider going downtown here, walk down Main Street. There's a terrific candy shop. And we want to say again, thank you very much to Oscar Tortola Group for sponsoring tonight, and also the Main Street Candy Bar, our candy shop right here in downtown Lake Elsinore. And again, one final time, a nice round of applause for Erin Simon. Thank you, Erin.